Good morning.
What's up, Mike? Good morning.
Man, I am doing fantastic. How you doing?
Man, I'm awesome. I'm really excited for the show today. There's so much going on in the world of real estate right now, and interest rates and markets and all that stuff. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I feel like we should just get into it. What do we got for the people today?
We're going to be talking about interest rates. I'm actually throwing a bunch of stuff into the chat now. We're going to be talking about interest rates. We're going to be talking about the job report. We're going to be talking about the market and what's going on there. A new player of the game, Open Door, is coming into our market and what you need to know about it. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a lender, and if you're a homeowner and home buyer, because it means different things for everybody. If we got a little bit of time after that, we're going to get to the affordability index. But most importantly, I want to make sure that we are hitting your questions. So pop all questions and comments into the chat. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we put out market updates, things to do in Michigan, local news, things about cities and all that kind of stuff. Just did 8 videos on Ferndale. They're going to be popping up over the next couple of weeks, which is actually a heck of a city. There's a lot more to it than what I thought.
Big time.
Yeah,
you guys, if you haven't subscribed to the Perna Team and Mike's YouTube channel, you got to do it. It's the amount of content that you guys are putting out, and just like fun stuff about cities and like top 18 things to do in May or something like, right? Like, was it 18 or 22 things to do in May or
something like that? Yeah. There's a lot.
You've done an incredible job with that. By the way, I've got some incredible affordability index data that we probably should talk about during interest rates. So anyway. So, yeah, you're putting that all in. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Like always, if you want to throw any kind of questions in the chat, we'll make sure we get to those. And off we go. Sound good, Mike?
Sounds like a plan.
Cool, man. What do you want to talk about first? Interest rates?
Let's hit the interest rates because I think that's been on a lot of people's minds. So interest rates clearly have been going up, right? We're 5.25, somewhere in that range right now. The Fed. So here's what was interesting. So this week, Jerome Powell did as expected. He raised the rate another roughly half a point, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that the interest rates for home buyers are going to go up. They'll probably remain fairly steady because the mortgage companies had already pushed the rate up in anticipation of that rate change. So what happens is the banks have to go buy the secured money from the federal government, for lack of a better simple. I mean, I know that's oversimplification, but we'll go for it, right?
Yep.
So they buy the money at a certain rate, and then they have to sell it, and they've got to have some sort of an income on top of that. Fair?
Yep.
Fair.
I call it buying, like selling T-shirts. Like if you're a Walmart and you sell T-shirts, you buy it from whatever factory, you add a margin to it, you sell the T-shirt in the store to the consumer. Banks do the same thing. They buy the money from the federal government at a certain rate, they put a margin on it, they sell it to us, and that's how banks make money.
And that's it. And there's all kinds of different numbers that play into that, like front end and back end and points and basis and blah, 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 blah. But in its simplest form, that's what it is. They get the money here, they resell it to the consumer here. And that's how it works for mortgages primarily, but also, small business loans, student debt, credit cards, car loans, all of the above, right? All of the above, because all this stuff is government backed on some level. So in anticipation of the rate moving up, the banks had already moved it up, knowing that they could not get the money as cheap as they could 3 weeks ago, right? Jerome Powell's been very clear that rates were going up. However, this was a little bit different because what he also said was, I intend to hold these rates steady for the foreseeable future. And when Jerome Powell uses words like foreseeable future, what he really means is 6 to 8 months. Right? He wants to see where we're going because he is trying to land a 747 on a quarter. He is trying to tap down inflation and at the same time not cause a recession, which is frankly extremely hard to do. And it's extremely nuanced, right? Because the only way to bring down inflation or slow inflation is by raising interest rates. Because what happens is the intended purpose here is not to raise interest rates on mortgages per se, but to raise interest rates on business lending. However, they have to raise rates across the board to raise the rate on one. So General Motors, for example, is building the Hummer here in Detroit, right? It cost like $80 billion or whatever the number was for them to go in and redo that factory. It was something like 600 tons of concrete for them to go and relay to make Poletown into a functioning modern factory. right? At 2% or 3% for a business loan, because General Motors isn't putting all that cash up front. They're loaning 80% of it, right? By taking the small business loan at 2 or 3%, they're like, okay, if the Hummer does well, awesome, huge upside. If the Hummer does okay, we'll do okay. If the Hummer does crap, well, we'll lose a little bit of money, but not that much because the money's cheap. But at 5% or 6%, General Motors is going to say, you know what? We're not willing to take a risk on something that could be a dud. So we're just not going to do the work at all. Which eases the supply chain and eases inflation, because now all those hundreds of tons of concrete, all those thousands of miles of wiring, all of that stuff goes unbought. Yep. Right. In addition to that, it eases on another way where we're having this lack of employable people. It eases that as well. Right. Because if General Motors doesn't go employ 1,000 engineers and construction people and electricians and pipe fitters and all those people to go redo this factory, that's 1,000 people that can go get a job somewhere else. Right. So he's effectively trying to do both. And caught in the crosshairs are real estate purchasers and sellers, which are now paying rates in excess of 5%.
By the way, very quickly, Mike, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit the relation between the Fed interest rate, because you hear the Fed is going to raise interest rates, and how mortgage interest rates are determined? Can you talk about that correlation?
Yeah, and it's a pretty easy correlation. So a bank like a Chase Bank will go to the Fed and say, hey, I need money to loan out, because they're not loaning their own money, right? Yep. They're just not. I mean, fair enough. They're just not. Yep. So they go and they say, hey, we want you to ensure that if this loan goes under, you're going to make us whole. In return, we'll keep the economy moving forward, and we'll keep the gears turning by continuing to put money out into the economy. And the Fed says, great, I'm going to give you this money at 3%, right? And then Chase says, okay, and we're also a business. We need to service the loans. So every single month, we need to make sure the payments are made on time. Any late notices go out, any defaults go out. If we need to go to court to get the money, we do that. If we need to go take a house, we do that. If we need to take a factory, we do that, right? So they're going to add a little bit of money to the top, right? Usually 0.5 to 0.75%. And then they're going to say, and we need to make a little money in profit, because we are a for-profit company, not a nonprofit company. So we're going to add like a point or so on top of that.
Yep.
Right. And that's it. That is the basics. And that is a super, super basic description, but that is the basics of how money works, like as how loans work. Right.
Every time you guys hear mortgage rates going up, we heard a great analogy. I don't know, man, maybe 4 or 6 months ago. This isn't the Fed slamming on the brakes.
Right.
This is just the Fed like taking their foot off the gas and coasting for a second. Does that make sense? Like they're trying to just slowly bring us back into balance of an overheated economy in slowing down inflation. They're just kind of taking their foot off the gas right now with these interest rates going up.
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually writing on a letter because I have nothing else to write.
That's really good.
Yeah. So there it is. This is our economy as it's been. It has been just taken off like a rocket ship, going in a very vertical direction, right? Like if you've got a plane and 90 degrees is up and down, it's been at like a 75-degree angle for the last year and a half. We really need it to be at like a 25 or a 30-degree angle, right? Like inflation is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, economists say that somewhere around a 1.8 to 2.5% inflation is manageable and expected, because that's also generally speaking where wage growth sits, right? So the cost of things is going up concurrently with wage growth. Right now, in the past 4 decades, wage growth has outpaced, well, with the exception of let me say this, in the last 60 years, with the exception of the last 2 decades, the 4 decades previous to that, wage growth has outpaced inflation. Okay. And that's our boomer generation, right? So our baby boomers, if we look at this from a psychological level, and this is playing into the thought process of today, if we look at this from a psychological level, we had World War II, right? We had the Great Depression, right? Everything was as bad as it could be, and nothing will ever be good again in life. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and get some mason jars. I'm going to save screws. I'm going to save nails. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to screw them up in my ceiling, because you never know when you can use a nail. And none of those things ever occurred. They never needed them, because they went on to World War II, which was a terrible travesty caused greatly by a depression itself, the Great Depression, right? But it also pumped trillions of dollars back into the economy, right? The war machine was what got us out of that slump, right? It's just a known thing.
Yeah.
And then we had all these vets come home and they had all this money and they wanted to go and they wanted to buy things. So they started buying houses and they started buying cars and they started buying a black and white TV and then eventually a color TV and then a second TV. And the boomers were going into their lives thinking our lives are going to be pretty okay.
Yeah.
Right? That was the psychology of the 50s and the 60s. We get to the 70s and they're sitting there thinking, okay, we can do better than we thought. We're actually like, if anybody's seen those Ameritrade commercials where you see the silver fox out there on his boat and like, oh my gosh, I invested in it, was so good. No, it wasn't so good. The economy itself was so good, right? And it was so good. And our wages outpaced inflation for 30 years, right? And that's why we went from one black and white TV and one car to two cars, sometimes three cars, 3, 4, 5 TVs. We all now have cell phones. We all now have laptops, all of these things. And now we're going in reverse, right? 15 years ago, there were articles coming out, and truthfully so, that our generation, Austin, yours and mine, Gen X, like the second half of Gen X and the millennial generation, we were going to live at a lower, whatever you call it, not income, not cost of living, but we have to live with less than the generation previous, right? And a lot of that had to do with in the late 90s, early 2000s, the start of the disappearing middle class.
Yeah.
Right. Keith, I'm gonna get you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you throwing that in there. I'm gonna land this plane though. So what ends up happening is we've got inflation and everything is costing more, which it doesn't matter when wages are going up faster than inflation. But right now we're seeing the opposite happen. And this is not a sudden thing. This is a gradually then suddenly. Like it's suddenly on our radar because inflation just went to a real high number and everybody wants to talk about it. But this has gradually been happening over 15 years. Now, how this plays how this plays into inflation is the government doesn't want a super heated economy because what goes up must come down. Right.
Yep.
And we saw that in 2006. We saw that in the early 80s. We saw that in the 20s. Right. And every time we've learned from these examples. Now, it doesn't mean that we're getting it right, but we're at least trying to get it better. Right. So right now, Mr. Powell is saying, OK, I'm going to put interest rates up, but not too far up. I'm going to put it to a manageable level and hopefully bring the arc back because he doesn't want it to go up and then crash down. He doesn't want to see an 8% or 10% or even a 15% unemployment rate. He doesn't want to see that, right? Yep. Nobody wants to see that because that is a disaster on a level far higher than inflation is.
Yep.
Right. So where we're at with interest rates is, again, we're just north of 5%. I see them landing. And if you had asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have said, hey, we're looking at 6.5%, possibly 7% end of year. But based on what Jerome Powell is saying right now, I don't think that we're going to see it go above 5.5% through the rest of 2022. Yeah. Now, that said, at that point, we're going to take a pause. We're going to see where inflation is, all right, as a government, and then say, okay, one of three things are going to happen. We're either going to hold tight because if inflation is starting to arc back down, but not crash back down, we'll probably just hold tight. If inflation is still climbing, we'll probably go for another 0.5 point to a point in 2023, which frankly, I think that would be a little bit of a disaster for the real estate market. So I don't see that happening, right? Real estate itself is a very large part of the GDP, or inflation will start coming down rapidly, in which case he'll say, great, let's go ahead and reduce rates 0.5 point to a point, maybe keep them in that 4 to 4.25 range, which is really where I see interest rates going next year. Now, what that means for us today is, if these things happen, home values will continue to go up.
No doubt about it.
Right? Home values will continue to go up. And simply put, we've got a lack of homes just built, just that exist for families today that want homes and need homes, are trying to get into homes. We know this. We've seen the multiple offer situations for 2 years, right? This is not an unknown thing. But if we see inflation, as it probably will, start coming back down from 8 to 7 to 6, and then settle in closer to 5-ish towards the end of the year, maybe next year, whatever that looks like because of the higher inflation rates, the housing market will continue to increase in price, right? Even if it's only 5 or 10%. So if I'm a home buyer, I'm gonna land this on the home buyer. If I'm a home buyer, what this means for me is, man, I got shit luck on my interest rate because I waited 90 days too long. But I'm still going to buy because next year that same home will be 10% more. And I can always refinance down when interest rates come back down, and they will come back down 3/4 to a full point.
Yeah. I'm even more optimistic than that. Like, it's interesting. Like, I was out with a good friend of mine, Justin, last night, Mike.
Yeah.
And he's a smart guy. I mean, he's a journalist, right? He's pretty on top of things. And I had said to him, he had said, hey, I heard interest rates went up. And I said, yeah, they went up by like 2%. And he goes, what? And he goes, oh my God, everything's going to crash. It's just like psychological. Like his immediate reaction was everything's going to crash.
Yeah.
Said, well, actually, it's not.
Okay.
And he said, why? And I talked about that a little bit. But what's really interesting is we started talking about home affordability, which is look, I'll say it a different way, right? Like we all hear the stories. Like, I don't, what's the cheapest you've ever paid for gas in your life, Mike?
87 cents.
87 cents. Okay. I think
I had a Camaro, I think. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. I think mine might have been 79 cents at the Clark gas station at Michigan Ave and Carpenter Road in Ann Arbor, FC. Anyway, and now gas is more, but we make more. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
and that
used to cost 50. So anyway, what's the affordability? What's my mortgage payment in relation to my income? Is what matters. Can I share this chart with you? It's really
please. And while you're sharing that chart, Keith, I'm not going to talk about war. I'm going to keep that off the table. Although I did talk about war, and I'm currently talking about war. All right, let's
go. Okay, so this is what's called a U.S. Composite Housing Affordability Index. This chart actually works a little counterintuitive. What this means is that the Composite Affordability Index is the ratio of median family income to qualifying income, okay?
Yeah.
So the higher this number is, the more affordable homes are in that time frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you would think like, okay, the lower this number is, the more affordable homes are. No. The higher on this graph, the more affordable homes are in relation to a family's typical income. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
So we peaked at, when everything crashed, we peaked at 203.7. Okay. And that means that, so the average homeowner had double the income sufficient to purchase a medium priced home.
Yes.
Right? If 100 is sufficient income, this was double. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm going to just show some historical things and let you unpack it. But right now, even with rates going up, or in 2021, we ended up at 148.1.
Yes.
Okay. Which means that we were 50% higher than the income that it took to buy the medium priced home. Okay. The lowest number was in 2006 at 107.6. And so if you look at over the last 20 years, like before the market crash, we were in the 120s, low 100s, right?
Yeah.
And then the market crashed right in here, and affordability went flying up. And affordability has just never kind of taken a hit the wrong way since then, right? Yeah. I imagine right now, and we don't have the 2022 data, but the 22 data, like we're probably, even with the higher interest rates, we're probably still way better than we were pre-crash. Does that make sense? Sure.
Absolutely. And with the interest rates going up as they have from 3% to 5%, we're going to see that number probably closer to the 130, 125, 132, whatever that looks like, right? It's not going to be in the 140s. It's not going to be in the 140s. I mean, simple math, right? I mean, if you were going to buy a home 90 days ago, and let's say the mortgage payment was $1,500, guess what? It's $1,800.
Yep.
That's it. It's just more money. But think about that. $300. I'm not trying to belittle this. $300 is a lot of money, but it's also when in relation to every other income or bill or anything else you want to consider, it's not.
Yeah.
Right? Like at the end of the day, this is why we still have multiple offer situations and people are getting rates of 5% because they're saying, hey, we need to live somewhere. Right?
Yep. Now the live somewhere, and it's still incredibly affordable to live somewhere. Now, I caution you, Mike, and I caution you on something.
Yeah, I would say sort of incredibly affordable. I would say
we're on the decline on affordability, but we got a long way to go.
Yeah, but also, and then there's another thing to consider here. The reason why I have faith behind the housing market is simple. And again, everybody on this call should be doing the same thing if you're not a homeowner, and that's calling around and finding out how much rents will be for you when you release. 100%.
No doubt.
Because rents in the last 2 years have gone up 25%, and they're going to go up another 10 to 15% this year. And there are a lot of reasons for it, right? There are a lot of reasons for it. There's some very big institutional players that are putting money into the national market and here locally. And what they're doing is they're inflating the cost of the home purchase because they're willing to go in cash and they're willing to pay a little more than the next guy. But then they're putting the rents way up there, which is causing people to look at it and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't be a renter. And that's the truth, right? Like right now we've got, there's an apartment complex in Bloomfield Hills. And I was just curious because I have a friend that lives there. And they're renting at $13.50 a month, right? And they leased 6 months ago. Just for grins, I called the apartment complex. That same rental is going at $1,600 a month. And there's 6 months left on that lease. So if it's going that high now, what will it be when the release comes up? So now is the time for this person to start saying, okay, I want to get my house in order. I want to get my finances in order. I want to make sure I've got my down payment available, because at $1,600 or $1,700 or even $1,800 a month, I'm buying a $250, $300, $350 house, right? Cost for cost, pound for pound, right? And let's say it's a $250, which means that you're actually going to save a little bit on the monthly payment, but you're also going to get back a nice write-off on the taxes, right? You're going to be paying down that house note $300-$400 every month.
Yep.
So that's a $500 to $700 push in the homeowner's favor over the renter.
No doubt. Plus, yeah, it's incredible, the difference.
Yeah. And sure, okay, let's put this out there. With a house, there's some maintenance. Okay. Well, look, how much maintenance? Well,
not $6,000 a year maintenance.
No. If we do the math, generally speaking, maintenance is between 0.5% and 0.75% of the cost of the house per year. Okay. So let's say, same example, that person goes to buy that $250 house, right? Let's say there's, I don't know, $1,500 worth of maintenance every year, right? And now over a 20-year period, are you going to need a roof? Yes, but that's figured into my $1,500 calculation, right? Because over 20 years, that $1,500 a year is $30,000. So that's your roof, that's your windows, that's your furnace, that's your AC, that's all of it on this house. $30,000 more than covers all of this stuff, right? And then there's the complaint of, okay, well, I don't want to deal with lawn. Okay, well, I don't either. Like, my yard is larger than the average yard in Royal Oak. It costs me $30 a mow. I don't do it. And that's not me saying that I would not do it. That's me saying, hey, for the hour it would take me, I make more working. Mm-hmm. Or I would rather buy that time back and be with family.
God, I just pictured you riding around on a John Deere with a Busch Light.
I could do it, man. I could do it.
You're right. You need somewhere to live.
Yeah.
You need somewhere to live. And when you look at what rents are.
Yes.
Now, you might say to yourself, well, with renting, I don't have to put down such a big down payment, but that's not true either. It's like if you're renting something for $2,000 a month, Mike, you got to put down a month and a half security deposit, which means you have to put $3,000 down, right? Plus your first month rent. That's $5,000. The day you move in, you got to write a check for $5,000. There's a lot of ways to get into a home for about that.
Yeah, I'm in a week or a mow.
You said a mow. It just sounded like a month. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, either way. Oh, thanks, Keith. I appreciate you bringing that back because, like, I don't want anybody to be confused. Yeah. I don't want anybody to be confused that I'm paying $30 a month because everybody's like, this guy.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, you're going to see a lot of things about interest rates going up. It's okay. Things are affordable. All they're trying to do is slow it down. They're not slamming the brakes. They're just easing off.
That's it.
It makes sense. Like, again, I love what you just said. Just to recap the conversation, I love what you just said. Like, we would have thought it was going to be at 6 or 7% by the end of the year. Nope. If anything, we're downgrading, and then we might even downgrade the next year. And if you're trying to time this market crash, you can't, because there's no homes that's still in inventory, and rates are still 5%, which are amazing.
Well, and that's one thing that we have. Yeah, and that's one thing that we have learned through the last recession and through, frankly, the recession of the 20s, is nothing in the economy exists in a bubble or a silo. Nothing is in a silo, right? Like when we talk about that in business, where like Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called Silos, and he talks about how like your job, like you go in, you clock in, you do your work, you go home. And you're like my father, right? He worked in a factory and he felt like he lived in a silo. He did his job and it didn't really affect anything else or anyone else, right? But the reality is it all affects everything else and everyone else, right? The reason the housing market is going so bonkers is because the employment market is bonkers. And all of a sudden, people have cash, right? And Keith, that's a great point. 40-year interest rate average, 7%. My first loan was 9%.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. So let's think about this. So for the housing market to crash, right? 3 things need to happen. 1, we need foreclosures,
Yeah.
right? We need people without jobs, right? And we need people without equity. We don't have any of those things.
We don't have any of those. Yeah.
No. So, so the foreclosures would mean that people cannot make their payments, which means no jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying that it's not difficult to make payments because the cost of gas has gone up and milk has gone up and bacon has gone up and we love bacon and want to have it right after the Zoom, 100%, maybe 2 slices instead of 3, inflation. What I'm saying is, even though those prices have gone up, people are not going to lose their properties. Right. That's number 1. Number 2, people have jobs. And as long as they have the jobs, they're going to make the payments. And what's better is the payments for most people have actually gone down, not up over the last 5 years. Because as people bought homes in 12, 13, 14, 15, and they were paying these 3.75 to 4.5% interest rates, when the interest rates were hitting 2.75, 3, 3.25, who did not get 25 mailers, hey, you should refi? Nobody. We all got them. Who took advantage of it? Everybody. So over time, the payments have gone down on properties, not up. Even though the prices have gone up, the payments themselves have actually gone down. Right?
What a great soundbite that is. In order for a crash to happen, we need foreclosures, no jobs, no equity. We don't have any of it.
And then equity.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal reported it. Last year, the average American made more in how much their house went up in value than their job.
Yeah.
It's only like $1,000 more, but hey, $55,000. That's the average home value increase in 2021. Come on, guys. Come on. Now, let me ask you this. If you're a homeowner, and let's say you do lose your job, right? And you do grind through those last couple of payments and it soaks up everything, what are you going to do? You're sitting on 100 grand of equity. If you bought in 17 or 18 years, you're sitting on 100 grand of equity on average. Could be 70, could be 150. You're sitting on 100 grand at a very minimal down payment. Are you going to lose your house? Or are you going to put it up and sell it and walk out the door with 100 grand to go start over?
Yeah, you're not walking away from that.
Nope. We know that answer. And we know that answer from 06, 07, 08. Because what were there not in 05, 06? Foreclosures. Why? Because if people got in the hot water, they sold the house. Not a big deal. In 7 and 8, there was no equity because we had all these 0 down loans and pick a payment loans and negative amortization loans, and none of which exist today. Right? All those arms, all that stuff got broomed during that last down market. All those programs went away. So people today have equity and they're going to protect their equity by default. Am I saying that there's not going to be any foreclosures? No, there's always a foreclosure on some level. Sure. Yeah. And actually the level is about 0.2%. Yeah. But
it's a little higher than that right now.
It's not going to go up to 10% or 8% or 12%. We're not going to see a 30% delinquency rate, which was 28%, which was the peak of that last market, where 2.8 out of 10 people in the United States were at least 30 days late on their payments. We're not going to see that again. That's not where we're at, right? It's just not where we're at. We still have underconstructed over the last decade. That we have the biggest generation by population that are trying to either buy homes, the younger ones, or buy their second homes. And we still have the boomers who are living much longer than anticipated. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. My parents are there and I want them to live a very, very long time. I really do. I want to make sure that that's clear. And my grandmother died 2 years ago at 94 years old, right? She was told, hey, based on actuary data, right? Because that's an actual science. This is a science. And insurance companies use it, banks use it, all kinds of industries use it. It is basically the science of when are people going to die.
Yep.
Right. Showed that her generation should be passing between the age of 68 and 71. And yet they lived to 80 and 90.
Yep.
right? So what are they going to do? What did my grandmother do for the last 20 years she was alive? She did not sell her house. That's what she did. And she stayed in it, which kept that property off the market. What are my parents not doing? Well, guess what? They're fit. I mean, you've met my dad. He crushes it.
Your dad is in great shape, man.
Dude, he's better shape than I am. He's up on roofs doing shit.
Yep.
Let's be honest. So what is he not going to do? He's not going to sell his house and downgrade into a condo.
Totally agree.
He's like, I like my house. I will keep mowing my lawn. And he'll be doing it for the next 10 years. So that millennial that's going to try to buy my father's house is not available.
Yep.
And the builder that was supposed to build that next house for the millennial, they're still playing catch up. They still have 5-10 years of catch up. Yeah. So anyway, and that all leads into next point, which is the jobs report.
Jobs report.
Love the jobs report.
Yep.
Again, stellar month on the jobs report. We had 428,000 jobs added to the economy. We're within 10% of pre-pandemic levels, right? The boomers have started coming back to work. This great resignation is both coming and going at the same time.
Yep.
Right? So the difference between, and reading deeply into the jobs report, there are a couple things that stood out to me. First one is the only reason, so we're within 90% of the pre-pandemic levels of people at work. Yet we're at 3.7% unemployment, which is just as low as it was before. How does that work? Because 5 to 8% of people have removed themselves from the job market.
Yeah, it was like, hey, look, I'm close to retirement anyway.
Yep.
It's going to be done.
Hey, my dad was there. Like my dad was still doing electrical work, 20, 30 hours a week, making 40, 50 grand, maybe more than that as side hustles. And he said, you know what? What am I doing?
What am I doing?
What am I doing? What am I doing?
Hey, we had always thought about staying home, having my wife stay home, and we're just going to do it now. And
as it turns out, the pandemic forced that hand and it worked out.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do that. And maybe we don't even need 2 cars. There are a lot of families that have downgraded. I know I hate to use the term downgraded, but they've made the decision to go to a one vehicle family instead of a two vehicle family. Think about how much of a savings that is. I mean, what's an average lease or car payment or whatever that is right now? $300?
I don't. If you include insurance,
5, 6.
How about if you include insurance and maintenance? I don't think you're getting away with a car for under $800 a month.
Okay, let's call it $800 a month.
$600 a month. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Let's say $800 a month. So that's 10 grand a year right there.
Yeah.
Right. And then in Austin, you know better than I do. How much is it to throw a kid in daycare a month?
Oh, Mike, it's brutal. I think we spend $2,500, $3,000 like a month.
2 kids, right?
For 2 kids. Yeah.
So let's say $2,500 a month, right? Plus $800 a month. That's $3,300 a month. Guys.
Just in that. Yeah.
I mean, Metro Detroit, if you look at Oakland County, and I don't remember what the numbers are, but if you look at Oakland County, people are not making that. I mean, the average person that lives in Oakland County, and Oakland County is one of the rich counties, right? In the United States, it's one of the higher income counties.
Yeah.
We're still around 60,000, 65,000.
Yeah.
Wayne County is in the 50 range. So
you're right. That's a full income.
Why?
Hey, everybody watching this, I need you to come buy houses with us so I can afford all this stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So we have people that during the pandemic, they just realized that they were working, right? And then putting their kids in the daycare, and they have this extra vehicle, and they have all this extra cost and all these other things that are happening because we don't live in we don't live in a silo. We don't live in a vacuum. When you're going to the office or you're going to a job, what do you do on the way? Get Starbucks.
Yep.
Right? It's $5 a day, $25 a week.
Yep.
Right? I mean, there's a lot of other things that are involved that all of a sudden these expenses go away because, hey, you know what? I'm just going to use my Keurig. You know, even if I get fancy coffee, it's less than $25 a week. I mean, you know, for the most part, right? So a lot of people woke up and said, hey, all I'm really doing is running the money in a circle and not enjoying it. I am going and working to pay for daycare, to pay for a car, to pay for the Starbucks, to pay for all these things I don't enjoy. And the difference between what I'm making and what I'm paying out is what they call taxes. We are not actually further. A lot of Americans.
We're just working to pay for taxes.
That's it. A lot of Americans came to the realization that they were not moving forward by going to work. They were moving. They were just running on a treadmill, right? Financially. And emotionally, it was draining because it was taken away from their families.
God, you're so right.
And then you had, again, the baby boomers who are like, you know what? I'm done. Forget it. I'm out. Now, some of these guys have decided to come back to work. right? And the jobs are getting, because wages are going up, which we're going to talk about that in the jobs report. Because wages are going up, some of the people that are staying at home are now saying, okay, there's a 15,000 or 20,000 spread between the daycare and the car and the Starbucks and those things. So yes, I am going to start going back to work. And so that's where that gap keeps on shoring up a little bit at a time. And that's why every month they're expecting a number like 100 or 150,000 jobs added. And it's like, boom, 400. It's not even jobs added, it's people employed, right? It's like 300,000 more because the wages have actually gone up and people are like, okay, now the spread makes sense. Or a little extra is a little extra, and we need it as a family with inflation. So that's where we're going to, right? But that's why you see reports that look really, really strange, where it says, hey, 10% of the people that were employed before the pandemic are still not employed, but yet we have the lowest unemployment rate in the last 10 years. Doesn't quite add up, but that's how it adds up.
Yeah.
Right? Last but not least, we've also got rising wages. In this jobs report, they did retweak that number a little bit. So last jobs report showed year over year 4.6% wage growth.
Is that what it was? 4.6?
Yeah. This one says 5.5.
Okay. To call it 5 just to split the difference?
Yeah.
What is the
Keith, I'm with you. Keith, I'm with you. Every day he gets asked when the crash coming from folks outside the industry. This is the mindset out there. Well, this is, and there are a couple of reasons for that. And that's why I think it's important that, this sounds really terrible, but unpaid media is probably a better way to go. And I'll talk about that. What's up, Mark? How you doing?
Hey, Mark.
Okay. So wage growth, right? 4.6, then 5.5. I was at a conference and there was a guy that owns an accounting firm, and he a very large accounting firm, is privately held, and he deals with a couple thousand clients in many different industries, right? So he took his top 100 clients. I thought this was so super interesting. He took his top 100 clients and has been tracking their wages. So to qualify for the top 100, you have to do in excess of $1 billion in revenue or sales or whatever that looks like. Like these are big. These are like steel companies.
Big clients. Okay,
these are big companies, right?
Yeah.
So he took the top 100 and just started doing a case study a couple of years ago about their wages, because he also does their books. This is a lot of great data. And these are public companies, not private sector companies, right? So this is not the U.S. mail, right? This is not police. This is not fire. This is not teachers. This is not any of this stuff. This is not union labor. This is not any of this stuff. These are regular folk that can walk in and try to negotiate what they make on an individual basis, right? I just want to put some context around this. So when we see the 5.5% number, we're taking into account all of those people whose wages have changed zero, right? If you're a police officer and you're in a police union and your contract is not up for renegotiation this year, that's it. You make what you made last year.
Yeah.
Same thing for teachers and fire and postal and government workers, all of these different entities, right? I mean, it just is what it is. It just is what it is. But what you did find was, for the non-union, for the non-governmental, the average wage increase, and it was fluctuating between 22 and 26% last year. And these are not people getting new jobs. And yeah, I'm going to land that right there for a minute.
Yeah.
Realize that. Like, if you go talk to people, and then if you unpack the jobs report further, you'll find that the average person that went and did get a new job was closer to 30%. So anywhere between, let's say, 22 and 28% for our non-public people, public servants like teachers and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
A teacher did not get a 30% raise last year, or 22%. I don't even have to ask.
No.
I don't even have to ask. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. But I'll tell you what, we got a 15% raise last year per house that we sell because the prices went up that much. Technically, we're actually underpacing what a lot of other industries are pacing for. I mean, but think about this, right? So we have people like, and I hear these stories all the time. We have people where they're leaving a job to go do the same job somewhere else and make 15, 20% more.
We just had one of our best employees get a job offer like that.
Yeah. I mean, lateral moves, not even upward moves, lateral moves.
Yeah.
right? Because employers need to pay. Now that rubber band is according to this gentleman, that rubber band is starting to stretch real thin, right? So what happened was part of inflation has been a lot of companies anticipating inflation, but it not actually being there. Johnson and Johnson is a good one, right? So Johnson and Johnson, very large company, make a lot of household products. There's probably, if there's 30 things in your what do you call it, pantry, 5 of them are probably Johnson & Johnson backed on some level, right? Or they own that company. It came out on the report last year or last quarter that their quarterly earnings report was off the chart because they had raised their prices 12 to 15% on almost all their goods.
Yep.
Now the cost was only up 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
What do they call the rest? Profit.
Yep.
Companies have, and this is partly playing into where inflation is, right? Inflation seems like it's really high, but it's being artificially inflated as well by a lot of companies who are raising the prices on things faster than the cost to them is raising. And they're trying to, and at first they were saying, hey, we're trying to protect ourselves. But the reality is, they're now padding their own pocket.
Yeah.
Pardon me 1 second. My house person is here to actually start doing.
I'll actually tell you guys a story. He's talking about wages and that kind of thing. I have a really, 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 really good friend of mine that works for a really large company. You would know this company like that, right? And God, how long has he been there now? He's probably been there 10 years, 8 to 10 years.
Who's this?
He said, I'm just saying, I want to keep it general. That way I don't give away any names. But I've got a really, really good friend of mine that works for a really, really large company. You would know.
Is it me?
No, it's not.
We're not good. We're not really good friends.
We're a large real estate company. We're a small company compared to this company. We're like.
I feel like we're really good friends.
Huh?
I feel like we're really good friends.
You are a really good friend of mine.
Okay, I just want to make sure because you said a really good friend, and
Come on, man, come on.
I thought by default you were talking about me, but you weren't.
Right. Anyway, this is wild. Like they were losing so many of their top people and tenured people to a competitor that preemptively they came out and asked and gave my friend not only a raise but a retention bonus. And so so they raised his wages, I think 20%, maybe 25%, somewhere in there. I mean, so this is a 6-figure guy. So we went from 100,000 to 125,000, something like that, or 100 and maybe 110 to 125, something like that, right?
Guys, retention is the name. No, it's not. And retention is the name of the game because think about, I mean, for anybody that's a business owner on this, think about what the sheer cost is on bringing somebody new in and doing the training process, right? So even if they know the job, it's still 90 days to 6 months minimum to get these guys up and running because there are different processes and different systems and different things. And to get from zero to full tilt, like I'm actually producing what I need to be producing. If it's somebody new, like, okay, when I used to work in the restaurant industry, their mark was 6 months. It was from the day they hire a server to the day they break profit on that server. It was a 6-month pull.
By the way, Mike, you and I have this argument literally every day. 6 months. It's 6 months. Mike, chill out. It's 6 months.
You know what, Mark? I'm feeling the same way right now. Or Keith, I'm feeling the same way right now. I don't know what's happening.
All, you're rabble rousing. Second of all, I didn't have anybody stand at my wedding because I'm so popular. I know too many people. I was like, look, I didn't have any. And I've stood at a bunch of weddings and I was like, you know what? Nobody's standing. We're just going to have a good time.
Yeah.
So we had 0 people standing at our wedding.
I appreciate that. So Keith, I think you're right on that one.
Rabble rousing.
You're right.
Anyway, they also gave him, Mike, $50,000. Said, you sign here for 2 years. If you leave before 2 years, you have to pay us this $50,000 back.
Yep.
They gave him $100,000 over 2 years just to stay.
Just to
competitors were picking him off.
Yep. I mean, think about this, right? So you've got companies like this. You've got companies like Google, right? Apple just gave huge retention bonuses, upwards of $180,000 on average per software engineer, which that's something I actually want to talk about and unpack because that was a great conversation I was having the other day with somebody. And this goes to people's kids. Let's go to that level even, right?
Yeah.
So to really put a fine point on it, is the real estate market going to slow down its price increases? Sure, absolutely. We've been on its here for far too long, and we're stretching that that the dog is on the leash, running way far ahead, but we're going to pull the leash back. We're going to yank it back just a little bit. But our home value is going to go down? No. No, they're just not. They're just not. They're just not, because what Keith was saying, that the average 40-year interest rate was 7%, and we're still at 5.25, maybe 5.5 on a bad day, right? Like we would have to get to 9 or 10% for it to really, really impact the market on that level. And if we did get there, guess what? All these gains in employment, all that would go away too. So the Fed's not going to allow that to happen. They'll just drop the rates if we get close to that point, right? Because the point of the Fed raising the rates, again, is not to put the brakes on the economy. It's to just tap it down just a little bit. It's a slow down. Right now, we're going 105 miles an hour on 696, and we really need to be going 70.
Yep.
Right? Jerome Powell's just the state trooper behind us saying, hey, bro, it's not 105. That's reckless. That's reckless driving. And that's where we're at.
Yep.
That's where we're at. I do want to talk about Open Door coming to the market, because this is going to be extremely interesting. So all of our Metro Detroiters, I don't know if y'all saw the news, Detroit Business covered it first, and they did a nice job with it. Open Door is a real estate company that is coming to Metro Detroit. And I'm going to unpack this a little bit. So Open Door works with home sellers and real estate agents, right? And what this looks like is they're what's called an iBuyer, right? Which is kind of an Apple-esque term for turnkey. You receive an offer, you say yes, you get cash 2 weeks later, right? The value proposition that they bring to the market is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, you don't have to do any cleaning, you don't have to do any fixing, you don't have to do any showings, you don't have to do any painting, none of this stuff. We're just going to have we're going to use the algorithm to come up with a gauge, a range, right? Yep. If the range seems okay, then we'll send a rep out to tighten it down and then make you a written offer right there on the spot. At that point, you can accept it or reject it. But what you don't have to do, again, is show the property or do open houses or all of those wonderful things.
Yep.
But all good things come with a cost. All good things come with a cost.
Yep.
So next step is, once you accept the offer, they do their own home inspection, right? The average, according to their own documents, because they're a publicly traded company, they got to put this out there, the average homeowner is knocked back $11,000 per home inspection.
Yep.
That's not a little bit of money, right?
Yep.
The average offer is 91 to 93% of actual value. I'm gonna bring this all back to dollars in just a moment.
Yep.
The average, right? And so those are the averages. And then they don't charge a real estate commission. They charge a service fee, which happens to be the same as a real estate commission.
That's very good, right?
Yeah, it's really good, because they're not real estate agents. They're a company providing a service. So they do a service fee that happens to be the same. So let's take your average Joe person in Metro Detroit. Oh, and let me unpack this a little more. So who this is going to affect. So this company coming to Metro Detroit, and the parameters that they've set for Metro Detroit is they will buy any house with a value between $100,000 and $700,000, built after 1940.
Yeah.
In the area of Rochester Hills to Allen Park, from the water to Brighton. So effectively 70%, 60% of all homes in Metro Detroit qualify for this.
Yep.
Right? There's two things that these guys do next. One is sell the home. Two is hold and rent the home. Just depends on which one's the better ROI. Right? And it's different by market. In Arizona, they sell. In Nashville, they've been holding more, things like that, right? Because they also want to have this huge portfolio of renters, of rental properties, right? So let's unpack this. So the house value today, let's say Open Door walks in the door and I walk in the door, and we're both valuing the home at a closing of $300,000, which is your average home in Metro Detroit right now. Give or take a few bucks, right? And I say, hey, Austin, I can get you $300,000. I'm going to charge you a 6% commission, but I'm going to get you the $300,000. And you say, great, right? After all the fees, the title, and everything else, you end up about 92% anyway, right? Open Door is going to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Your home is worth $300,000, but as a convenience, I'm just going to write you a cash offer right now. In 2 weeks, you'll have the money in your bank, and you can stay up to 60 days past the closing, right? Now you got to pay for it, but you can stay, right, if you need time. And I'm going to rate you that offer $376. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to knock you back another $11,000 on the inspection, and it's going to seem reasonable. It's going to, trust me, Austin. This
We're
inspection,
very good at figuring out a way to make this sound reasonable. Yes.
oh, it's going to be so reasonable. Hey, man, downspout extensions. That's like $1,000 to install.
Yeah.
Okay, bro. Hey, there's a hairline crack in your driveway. That's a $600 repair.
Yeah.
Okay. So think about this. So the stuff that my buyer, when I bring it as a real estate agent, because I'm probably going to bring you 3 or 4 buyers, the stuff that my buyer is not even going to think is a problem because they're too afraid to lose the house, Open Door is going to write down on a list, give a value to everything, and then knock that off the price. And it's all going to seem so reasonable. You're right. You're right. The HVAC system is 20 years old, and the life on it is 25 years. So we're going to ask for $4,000 reduction in price. You're right. That makes perfect sense. My buyer won't ask for that. They're just happy to have a home, happy to have an acceptable offer. You know what I mean? So now you're at $365, and then they're going to take their service fee off, which is another $20,000, give or take. Yep. So now you're at $345. So the difference between me putting the money in your pocket or Open Door putting the money in your pocket for your average person in Metro Detroit is going to be between $20,000 and $35,000.
I'd say at least.
And that's a low end number. Low end. That I'm being clear on that. And guys,
that's if the house is in great shape.
And that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying we won't look at it. So as a company that is now signed up with Open Door, and we're in the process of getting this completed out, one of the values that we're going to bring to our homeowners is, hey, we are going to solicit an offer from these guys as well as a couple of other of the iBuyers that are in the area, because we don't want to leave any money on the table. Yeah. And our counterparts that are in Arizona and in Nashville that we mastermind with and we talk to, less than 5% of the time are the sellers actually taking those offers.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they look at the market, because I mean, and I'm not saying that all real estate agents are this way, but I would like to think that real estate agents should be trusted advisors. But they look at what the real estate agent can get them and what Open Door is offering, or OfferPad, or any of these guys, and they're saying, shoot, that 25 to 35,000, yeah, we want that money. And the value again is you don't have to show your home, you don't have to do an open house, you don't have to clean up, you don't have to do all these things, right? So let me ask you the question, Austin, if I were to give you 20 or 25,000 bucks and say, hey, all I need you to do is leave Saturday morning at 10 a.m. and come back Sunday night, go get a hotel somewhere with everybody, would you do it for 25 grand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's effectively what we're asking.
There's a market for this, by the way.
Oh, no, there is a market for this. Absolutely.
Like, I'll give you an example.
They're buying 8,000 homes a month. There is a definite market for this.
Look, I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
We went, you and I were in Las Vegas for a conference. Mm-hmm. We decided one morning to get up really early and take a helicopter ride over the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And it was like super badass, right? Yeah. And I forgot my sunglasses. Now, I'm not the type of person to buy expensive sunglasses. I'm the type of person to buy cheap sunglasses because I live on the lake and I drop them in the lake all the time. So I buy like $5 sunglasses. Well, we were at the helicopter thing and I was about to fly over the Grand Canyon and I didn't have sunglasses. So I had to go to the gift shop and buy a pair of $5 sunglasses. They just happened to cost me $35.
Sure.
Right? Because they had my ass, right? And so there's people that are in a pinch and need the money in 2 weeks.
Yep, there are.
And if you can wait an extra 30 days for an extra $30,000 for your family.
Yep.
Now they make it sound sexy. So it's a very interesting product. There is a market for it. Just like there's a market for DoorDash to deliver McDonald's to your house. Sure. Instead of you driving the 1.2 miles to go get McDonald's for yourself, right?
Sure.
It's like,
no, and you're right about that, and you're absolutely right about that, and that is the difference. They're trying to figure the value and then charge a ton for it. And then there's another part of this that there is a second part of this. So you hit the nail on the head. It's all situational.
Yeah.
Right. I need the money fast.
Yep.
And Open Door will close in 14 days.
Yep.
That's pretty fast.
It's fast.
But let me ask you the question. What's faster, that or getting a HELOC? HELOC.
I'd say the same, but okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I bake in Huntington, Macon. When I went and got my HELOC, it took 7-8 days. I think I was there on I think I went in on a Monday or a Tuesday, and by Wednesday the next week, they were like, "Yep, you're approved. Here's the amount. You can withdraw whatever you want whenever you need." Like, it just didn't take that long. They just literally ran my credit. I submitted my tax statement, and they're like, "All right, you're good." Right? Because they're basing on the equity of the house that's already in the house. They didn't even do an appraisal because I wasn't even looking for that high of a
Yeah. They just do the AVM.
yeah. So okay, so that's a fair point. With mine, I didn't do an appraisal, so it did short back up from 2 weeks down to like 8 days, right?
No, you're right though.
So if you're a person that and generally speaking, if you need this cash out, you probably need 20, 30, 40,000. I would have to guess. I don't know this, but I would have to guess that whatever we're going sideways on, we're going sideways not 300 grand. We're going sideways like 30 grand, right? Based on how much home values went up last year, the average American gained 55,000 in equity. If you own your home for 3 or 4 years, you've got more than that. So instead of giving a company an extra 20 or 30,000 to access that equity, call Chase or call Huntington and just get a HELOC for $800.
Yep.
Right? Guys,
It won't even
this
cost
is
that
why
much.
this is why you have representation.
Yeah.
This is it, because these companies are going to be coming at you now in the Michigan market, and they're gonna have all the bells and whistles, and it's going to look shiny, it's going to look great, and at the end of the day, don't forget, they're also going to have you sign a document saying that they represent themselves and they are not representing you. They are putting offers in front of you. You take them at your own risk. Right? Every good company has that disclaimer when they're operating in their best interest, not your best interest. Right? In real estate, it's different. We have what's called the disclosure regarding real agency relationships, which is a Michigan required form. We are required to disclose who we're protecting. And it says seller, buyer, or transaction coordinator. If we're
when
working
you're
with
Open Door, you're a company. Your obligation is to protect Open Door.
Yep.
When we act as representation for you, we're a fiduciary. Our responsibility is to defend your best interests.
Yep. Not
It's
that
the
different
difference
than
between a financial advisor that sells you investment products that make them the most money versus a financial advisor that is a fiduciary and sells you financial products that make you the most money for your situation or the risk tolerance or whatever. You know what I mean?
This is it, guys. This is where we're at. Right?
Fiduciary matters.
So if you need the cash, the first thing you do is you pick up your phone and call your trusted real estate agent, whomever that might be. Hopefully it's us, but if it's not, hopefully you got somebody you trust, it's a family member or a friend or whatever that looks like. And you say, hey, listen, I'm in a pinch and I'm not ashamed to have a confidential conversation with you about it, because that's another thing. People usually are a little bit too embarrassed to talk about it. And these companies that are nameless and faceless are a lot easier to deal with sometimes than somebody that you actually know. And a lot of real estate agents really get to know their clients over time, and they become friends and they become very friendly and things like that, which is good. You want somebody you can trust and you want somebody you know, but sometimes that line crosses when people get into hot water and it becomes an embarrassing situation. My point is, guys, Open Door is great. They have a great business model, and for some people, some very, very small percentage of people in the world, it is an actual good thing for them. For a much, much larger percentage of people, it is not. There are different ways to access equity. There are ways to get the home sold and get the money out. If you have a creditor nipping at your heels, there is no creditor in this world that wouldn't be willing to wait 30 or 60 days with a promise of payment signed, or put a lien on the house and say, okay, hey, listen, I'm actively going to sell the house. Here's the listing contract. Here it is in the multiple listing service. Here it is now pending 3 days later. Hey, listen, just throw it on as an attachment. We'll make sure the title company pays you out. There are 19 different ways to get this done without you spending an extra 20 to 35,000 on the low end of your equity that you have earned. I mean, you mowed that lawn, you painted that fence, you did all of these things to maintain this house, and you are allowing your hard work to be stolen out from under you by a company like Open Door.
It's very similar. It's very similar to me to the for sale by owner conversation, Mike. It's one of the things I say to for sale by owners all the time, because a for sale by owner is typically selling their home for sale by owner because, right, they want to save on some real estate commission. But
that's one of the reasons. And polls have actually showed that a third of for sale by owners or more are selling their home for sale by owner because they don't trust real estate agents. They had a very, very bad experience the last time around, and they don't want to go through it again. Which it's like going to a restaurant, right? Like, just because you have a bad experience at one restaurant doesn't mean you stop eating at restaurants altogether.
Yeah.
Just go back to that one restaurant.
just don't go to that restaurant anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at.
It's the same concept, though. It's like the average for sale by owner sells for 10 to 15% less than they'd get on the open market with representation. Yeah. And if you count the fact that you probably would pay a buyer agent 3% anyway, you're only saving 3%. So it's like
Maybe
you're doing something to save 3 to 5%, but you're losing 10 to 15%.
Here's what's interesting. There are some for sale by owners that are getting a little smarter about this.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, you know what? I'm looking for a certain number. And they get smart. They get smart and they're like, hey, then they like some of these guys, especially like some of the accountants out there, are starting to realize, hey, it is the net number that matters, not the gross number. I mean, it's like saying I own a company that has $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
Well, how much did you spend to get that revenue? Sure. $999 million. So I made $1,000. You know,
sure,
right? And they're realizing. So what I see some people doing now is contacting the real estate agent saying, hey, listen, we're going to give you 5 days. We're going to give you 10 days, whatever it is, to market the home and bring us an offer. And if you hit our number, great, we'll move forward. And if you don't, oh, well, we'll try the for sale by owner route next.
Yeah.
Right. And generally speaking, they're going back to the offers and saying, shit, I should have taken that offer because as a for sale by owner, I'm not getting the money. And that's how we know the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of them that are just going on the market saying, oh my gosh, we did get actually more as a net number than we thought because our agent was able to market it better. We were able to get more offers. We were able to pit them against each other. There was skilled negotiation. We were able to get rid of crap on the inspection that we were probably going to pay for if we were for sale by owner because we only had the one offer, maybe two.
Yeah.
So we've got those stories as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not begrudging for sale by owner. Right.
Nope.
I mean, in my world, I look at it like I pay a guy to mow the lawn and he uses that money to go feed his family. My dad does it himself.
Yep.
Right. And that's it. That's all it is. It's just people doing the job themselves instead of hiring somebody to do it. It's me hiring a painter or me painting the wall myself. That's it.
Yep.
Right. And sometimes if you get a good painter that can save you time and save you money and knock it out and get it done. And frankly, like, hey, happy wife, happy life. Right? How many of us are married on here? How many of us were?
I've never heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
My wife hates that phrase so much, Mike.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Nicole.
Well, she's in denial. She's in denial.
She's in denial.
She's all the way in Egypt.
Yeah, right. Ain't just a river in Egypt. But there's something to be said about if you do something yourself, right? But then it's like, okay, like as an example, I actually need to hire a painter because this wall behind me, I have been trying to paint for 6 months.
Yeah.
I just don't like the colors. I really want to do more YouTubing from here. But the reality is this is not a great setup. So let's be honest here. 6 months later, I should just hire a professional.
Is that a true story?
Yeah.
Just hire somebody, Mike.
Dude, I know. Because my dad taught me how to do all this stuff, so I feel like I should just do it myself. And every day that I don't do it is a day that I'm underperforming at my job because I'm not getting the things done I need to get done. I get it, and then Charity gets mad at me for not having videos and all the wonderful things, right?
Happy charity, happy life.
That's right.
Charity's a painter operations, and I can assure you, happy charity, happy life.
Yeah, if you got a good painter, like just throw them my way. If anybody has a good painter, throw them my way. Because I actually do need a good painter because I really need to get all this done. Because I am over it.
So good. You're so good, man. So good. What else do we have on our agenda today?
That's all we got. We hit deep and we hit hard on a lot of this stuff. We talked about the interest rates. We talked about the jobs report. We talked about Open Door coming to the market. All of it. Anybody have anything that we should be covering that we did not cover? Going once, going begging. Keith, did we nail it?
Interest rates. Yes. Worry about affordability.
And I got a painter.
That's what I got.
I got a painter right there.
I don't trust this Keith guy after he's talking all shit about it. Oh, if Austin got married today, he wouldn't even stand up.
I trust him. I think it's pretty accurate.
Look at him. This Keith Stonehouse guy. All right. Good job, guys. Good job today. Hey, by the way, real quick before we go, you went and saw the new Doctor Strange?
I did. Yeah?
Tell us about it.
Okay. I'm not gonna put anything. Yeah, she's happy. Yeah. There we go. I'm not gonna put anything I'm not gonna give it away, but I will say it's a lot more Wanda than I thought. I was really expecting it to be more Doctor Strange, if that makes sense. Like Wanda was a much bigger player, a much bigger character than I originally thought based on the previews. That's number one. Number two, I was definitely fulfilled as a Sam Raimi fan, and I'm kind of a half Sam Raimi fan. Like I love him and I hate him at the same time as a director. The guy that was in Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, I cannot remember his name. They're friends. They're friends from Michigan State when they both went there.
Okay.
He made a cameo in the movie. So good.
Okay.
I think 5's a little young. There we go. I think 5, honestly, Keith, I think 5 is a little young for this one. I really do. Yeah, you know what? It is. I don't have kids, but I'm gonna put this out there. Like there was a point where there was like a skull and it was crushed, and it was like, yep, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. Yeah. Okay. That is my professional non-parenting opinion. As someone who clearly parents, and I parent hard. I would not bring a 5-year-old. Or it is apparent I would not bring a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Shout out to the Commerce Little League T-ball and Angels. We got a big game today at noon.
Get it?
They've got a killer assistant coach, and we're gonna bring the heat today, Mike.
Yeah, I heard the assistant coach was just okay.
Oh, well.
Wait, are you the assistant coach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're out of the wedding, Mike.
That's good.
All right, good job today. Seriously, good job today.
Good job.
As
Thanks
always,
everybody
you
for
guys.
coming in. Hey, thanks for participating, Keith. I really appreciate it. Keep those comments coming. Mark, Naples, Florida. If anybody needs somebody, that's your go-to guy. And I'm going to call Chris. I'm going to get that wall painted. You wait and you see. You wait and you see. That's it.
Love it. All right, man. See you
next time.